Hello. So today I wanted to talk about dysphoria. Did I have it? Do I still have it? What did transitioning do for my dysphoria? So the interesting thing about my transition is that I didn't have dysphoria until I started identifying as trans. I didn't grow up as a child like thinking that I should have been a boy or missing something on my body. I didn't feel like that at all. I didn't feel anything about my body until I hit puberty, which was at age 12. And then I started to have a lot of problems with my mental health. I had an eating disorder. I was very depressed. And I didn't really know why. And I hated my body and I hated everything about myself at that age, from age like 12 to 14. And I was starting to slowly get over it as I was turning 14, turning 15. And then that's when I found the trans community, and it really just swiftly like pulled me back into that mindset of hating my body. But it had a different name and it had a different look. So for me, I didn't call it dysphoria until I joined the trans community, but in my mind, I retroactively went back and labeled all of the discomfort I felt with puberty as dysphoria, because to me, my going through puberty and having a really hard time was dysphoria. That's what I felt at the time. So I was like, oh yeah, of course I had an eating disorder. Of course I was depressed. Like I was developing the wrong way. That's what I thought when I became trans. Here's the thing about being a teenager who finds the trans community. When you are going through puberty, you don't think about the changes that are happening. At least I didn't. I won't speak for everyone, but for me, I was at an age of like the internet and stuff where I didn't know trans people existed at all until I was 14. And so I had no thoughts about puberty. I had no problems going through it. I was just like, yeah, this is just like what happens. Like, obviously, like I wasn't complaining about like, oh, my hips widened. Like I noticed, but it wasn't something I thought about because it was just a fact of life. Like, yeah, like this happens to everyone. Like every girl goes through this. So it sucks, but it's part of, getting older and more mature and stuff. But I didn't even really notice my boobs. Like they grew and I didn't think about it because I was like, yeah, every girl has these for the most part. Like, and so I was like, yeah, this happens. Like, it's just a thing that happens and you don't think about it. But once I came out as trans and I heard everybody saying like, I hate my boobs, I was like, yeah, these things are kind of annoying, right? Like they get in the way, and like they're like people sexualize them, and like they really suck. Like they're so inconvenient, and I always like, oh, they've always like just been like an extra weight that I didn't like. I mean, and then it snowballs from there. Like once you're aware of that part of your body that you don't like, it just gets worse and worse unless you consciously try and change the way that you think about it. I started out with like wearing like a tank top to like try and like restrict them, and that didn't really work because I don't have small boobs. And then I wore a sports bra, and that wasn't good enough after a little bit when I found out the binders were a thing. So then I bought a binder, and I told my mom it was a sports bra, and she paid for it. And I wore that. And honestly, like, it was like a solution to my problems for me. Like, it was like, yeah, this explains everything that I've been through. Like, to me, it was like, this is what's been wrong in my head this whole time, because I had always felt like that growing up. Like I had been like, what's wrong with my brain? Why am I so fucked up? Like, why do I feel like this all the time? I'm so depressed. I'm so like, something is wrong with me and I don't know what it is, and I have to figure it out. And so when I found being trans, I was like, that's what it is. That's what's wrong with me. Like I figured it out. Once I got on testosterone, I stopped having my intense dysphoria. And let me say, like, throughout that entire year and a half where I was waiting to get on hormones, My dysphoria was getting worse and worse. I wasn't comfortable going outside. I wasn't comfortable talking to people. I hated the way my voice sounded. I hated my chest. I hated my curves. I hated not being able to fit into men's clothes. I hated it. I hated it. I wanted everything that testosterone was going to bring by the time I got to it. Once I got into testosterone, it was like, yes, this is what I want. This is going to take away my dysphoria. And it did. It actually did for me. Some people, it really makes it worse. Some people, it doesn't. But for me, it did. Because it was everything I wanted. So my voice dropped right away. And I was like, yes, this is it. Like, I want to sound completely different. And I did. I ended up sounding completely different. I wanted the facial hair, which I still am growing. And I wanted more body hair, which I still have. And I wanted everything. Once I got on hormones, I was having a great time. And a lot of my problems got a lot better. I started going to school again. And I wasn't depressed anymore. And I was seeing all the changes. And for me, I felt like I got to put on a facade. It was like, okay, so I am stronger now. I'm not going to be broken down by all the stuff that affected me in the past. So all of the mood swings, all of the depression, the anxiety, my eating disorder, all of that is covered by this facade that I put on. So becoming a man was like a defense mechanism for me. And I don't know if that's like a weird thing to say, but that's how it felt. It was like, I can be whoever I want because I have this like facade that prevents people from like seeing the real me. I want to stress that during this whole thing, I was not thinking this deeply about it. And I've only started to do this deep reflecting after detransition. I was on hormones for 3 years. I didn't think about any of this stuff at all. I was moving forward with my life and I was not thinking about the past or like what led me to that point. So if you are feeling like, oh, that's not me, I don't have any of those like traits, or like, I'm not doing that, I don't feel like that, neither did I until after like reflecting. Okay, I do want to say this. I know I've mentioned this before. I had intense bottom dysphoria, and that was honestly probably the thing I hated most about myself before testosterone. I had so much bottom dysphoria. I wanted to have a penis so badly, and that was pretty much like the biggest thing that I wanted out of transition. Once I started testosterone, that went away. I didn't really want a penis anymore. I honestly didn't really care. And I actually started to like my genitals on testosterone. And I think if I had been able to get to that point a little bit sooner, that would have been better for me. So I want to talk about now. Do I have dysphoria now? And I talked about this with Calvin a little bit. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it over here. I don't know which side it is. I don't like to call it dysphoria because to me, dysphoria is like, at least in the trans community, to me, dysphoria means like feeling uncomfortable about your secondary sex characteristics. I don't personally like to think of the changes that were induced from testosterone as my own secondary sex characteristics. And so to me, like, I don't have dysphoria, like reverse dysphoria. I prefer to just say like, I have regret over what I've done to my body, because labeling it just seems counterintuitive to me. Like, it's what I did in the first place. Like, why am I uncomfortable with my voice? Like, why am I uncomfortable with my chest? These things that didn't bother me before. So I like to call it like, I just have regret, and I still struggle with that every day. Sometimes like I look back on my old photos or like old memories, and I'm like, man, like I really like looked good as a guy and I passed so well that I like think about how easy it was to navigate life every day. I didn't think about my gender. And like even being trans, like since it had been so long that I was trans, I didn't have to think about it every day. Like the only time where I struggled was like every week during my shot. Um, but other than that, like day to day, like nobody had to know that I was trans. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone, and I really miss that feeling. Sometimes I do still think like, oh, like what if I like grew my beard or like went back to my old name for a second and like I wouldn't have to try to be a guy. And I think that's the thing that a lot of detrans women struggle with. Once you go on testosterone and get to the point of like passing consistently, um, it's kind of just easy to think like I could just put on a binder and go out in public and talk to people and tell them I'm a boy and they don't think twice. It's also easier, I think, to be like a feminine man to detrans women or to trans men because I think growing up without male socialization telling us that being a feminine man is bad and like try your best to be masculine and strong and all of that. We don't grow up with that. At least I didn't. I was completely socialized as a female and expected to be feminine and all of these things. So to me, like, it's not going against my nature to be a feminine man. It's just calling myself something different, but embracing femininity, which I was socialized into. But being a masculine woman feels very hard to me. Going around and feeling like a failure as a woman because all these things I changed about myself, which I had naturally before testosterone, like my voice and my like lack of facial hair. So feeling like, man, like I failed womanhood, like even worse than I felt before I transitioned. Like that's just because of the female socialization, like growing up as a female in society, knowing that there are so many expectations of you. You have to look a certain way and be a certain way. Trying to let go of all of that, uncovering all of the internalized misogyny and all of the things that I had buried very deeply within me to transition, uncovering all of that, all of the feelings of inadequacy of being a woman. It's been a lot, but so I do still have dysphoria sometimes because I still do think sometimes that I would be better off as a man because of all of the medical changes that I've already gone through. But then I remind myself that I am not actively transitioning right now. I am not actively transitioning into a woman. I am just letting my body do what it would naturally do with its natural hormone levels. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to try to be a female. I just am. And that's the best thing that I can remind myself because trying to be a man was exhausting. Taking testosterone is easy, but it doesn't solve any of your problems in reality. So with that, I'm going to leave you. I hope I answered some of the questions that you guys have had. I've seen a lot of people asking about dysphoria. So that's my answer. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more of my videos and hit the little bell notification if you want to be notified every time I post a new video, which is usually on Wednesdays. Can't guarantee what time because I don't post at the same time every week, but it's always on a Wednesday most of the time. And watch another video if you'd like. I have quite a few. You could even go back and watch my old gaming videos if you'd like. I have 2 on the channel. And I might start streaming on Twitch. So follow me on Twitch. I'll put that link in the description below if you'd like to. All right. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. I wasn't comfortable going outside. I wasn't comfortable.